You have been taught that needing people is the same as loving them. It is not. The man who needs your approval will betray himself to keep it. The man who needs your rescue will resent you for it. The man who needs to be needed has already handed you the keys to his own peace and called it connection. Seneca watched that man fail in the marbled halls of Rome for 30 years. The senator who could not sleep until Caesar smiled at him. The rich man owned by the very things he owned. The courtier whose face changed with every face he faced. And he wrote down the cure. Not that you should need no one because people are beneath you, but that you should need no one, so that you are finally free to love them. The freest man alive is not the one who has everyone, is the one who, if it were all taken tomorrow, would still rise, still build, still stand. They will call him cold. They are looking at the most self-possessed man in the room, and they cannot tell the difference. Sit with that, because everything that follows turns on it. There is a kind of independence that closes a man down, and a kind that opens him up. We are after the second. So let us correct, at once, the thing you are already bracing against. This is not the lone wolf. This is not the hard heart, the closed door, the man who has decided that other people are weakness. Seneca himself names that misreading and throws it out. In the 9th of his letters to Lucilius, he writes that the wise man is self-sufficient. And then he warns, plainly, that this idea is wrongly explained by anyone who would drag the wise man out of the world and shut him up inside his own skin. That is not what it means. What it means is sharper and far harder. The wise man, he says, can do without friends. Not that he wishes to do without them. He is sufficient for a happy life, but not for mere existence. Read that slowly. He still wants the friend, the brother in arms. He simply does not require them in order to be whole. This is the whole hinge of it. Self-sufficiency. What the older Greeks called autarkeia is not the absence of others. It is the presence of yourself. It is sourcing your peace, your worth, and your direction from the one province no one can invade, your own character, your own reason, your own judgment. And once your peace is sourced there, a strange thing happens to everything outside you. The applause, the inheritance, the woman's love, the good name in the city, none of it becomes less sweet. All of it becomes a gift rather than a master. You enjoy it the way a guest enjoys a feast, knowing he does not own the house. You, the man building something real, a company, a body, a name, a life. This is the posture you are reaching for, whether you have words for it yet or not. Not to need less of the world. To need nothing of it for your own steadiness, so that you can pour yourself into it without fear. Now name the chains. Seneca, watching Rome, saw that the ambitious man wears 4 of them, and wears them so naturally he calls them ambition itself. The first is the need for approval, the hunger to be seen, ranked, praised, confirmed by other eyes before you can rest. The second is the need for rescue, the quiet expectation that when it goes wrong, someone will come. Someone owes you. Someone must catch you before you fall. The third is the need for permission, the held breath before the decision, the glance over the shoulder, the waiting for a nod that never quite comes. And the fourth is the need for fortune's gifts, the money, the status, the comfort, held not in the hand but in the chest, so that to lose them is to lose a piece of yourself. Walk through any room of striving men, and you will see these chains glinting on every wrist. And not one of them knows he is wearing iron. Here is the law beneath all 4. Every need is a handle. Every single thing you cannot do without is a handle by which the world can pick you up and turn you. The man who needs the promotion will swallow the insult to get it. The man who needs the deal will not walk away from the bad one. The man who needs to be admired will shape his whole life into something admirable and hollow. You do not have to be threatened with violence to be controlled. You only have to want something badly enough that another man holds it. Mastery over men, Seneca understood, is rarely seized. It is handed over daily by the men who need too much. So the project of self-sufficiency is not to acquire more until you fear nothing. It is to need less until there is no handle left for any hand to find. That is when you become, in the truest sense, ungovernable. And understand who is telling you this, because it changes everything. Seneca did not forge this in a hut on a hillside, scribbling about wealth he never had. He wrote it from inside the most dangerous structure of power on earth. He was the tutor, then the chief advisor, to the Emperor Nero. And in the early years of that reign, with the prefect Burrus beside him, he effectively helped run an empire. He stood a sword's length from a tyrant whose moods decided who lived and who opened their veins by nightfall. He was, by any honest measure, among the richest men in Rome. Vast estates, loans out across the provinces, a fortune so large his enemies used its very size as a weapon against him. This is not a man who never tasted what he tells you to hold loosely. He held it all in both hands at the dead center of the arena. And here is the part we will not airbrush, because the lie would be weaker than the truth. It was morally complicated. He made compromises a saint would not have made. He served power, and he was stained by it. The tension between the philosophy he wrote at night and the politics he practiced by day is real. And it is exactly what makes him worth your attention. This is not the counsel of a man who never had skin in the game. This is philosophy that was stress-tested in the one place that tests everything, near absolute power, holding absolute wealth, with death always one whim away. When such a man tells you to need no one, he is not romanticizing a poverty he never felt. He is telling you how he stayed himself in a place built to dissolve a self entirely. Which raises the obvious objection, and we will meet it directly. How can the richest man in Rome teach you to need nothing? Was he not a hypocrite, draped in luxury while preaching detachment? His enemies said exactly that to his face, and in the work we call On the Happy Life, he answered them. Not by pretending to be poor, but by drawing the line every building man must learn to draw. The wise man, he says, does not love wealth, but he would rather have it. He does not admit it into his heart, but into his house. Hear the architecture in that. The money lives in the house. It does not live in the soul. He will own wealth, Seneca writes, but he will hold it as an uncertain thing that may one day fly from him. And when it goes, he follows after it unconcerned. This is the posture, and it is not the posture of the ascetic who renounces, nor the miser who clutches. It is the posture of the man who pursues, acquires, builds, accumulates with full force, and holds all of it with an open hand. You are allowed to want the thing. You are allowed to build the empire. Seneca did. What you are training for is the ability to lose it without losing yourself. Because the moment your identity is fused to the asset owns you, and every man who can threaten the asset owns you too. Hold it loosely, and you become the one person at the table who can never be bought and never be broken. Because there is nothing on that table you cannot walk away. Things are to be despised, he says, not so that we may not have them, but so that we may have them without fear and trembling. Build the house. Fill it. Just keep your soul out of the furniture. Of the 4 chains, the heaviest is the first, the need for approval. It is heaviest because it is the most invisible and the most respectable. No one is ashamed of wanting to be respected, and yet Seneca returns to it across the letters with something close to grief, because he watched it consume the best men in Rome. The man who lives for the eyes of others, he saw, never truly owns a single day of his own life. He rises for them, dresses for them, speaks the sentence he thinks will land rather than the one that is true. He measures his own worth on a scale held entirely in other people's hands. And that scale moves with every rumor, every shift in fashion, every colder face at the banquet. Consider what this does to a man who is building something. If you need the applause, you will, slowly, and without noticing, begin to build what gets applauded rather than what is right. You will choose the visible win over the durable one. You will optimize your work for the moment of being seen and starve the part of it that only matters in private over years where no one is watching. The crowd becomes your architect, and the crowd has no plan. It only has appetite. Self-possessed man inverts this completely. He still hears the praise, and he is not too proud to enjoy it. But the verdict that governs him is internal. He keeps a court that sits inside his own chest, and it is that court he answers to when the lamp is lit and the house is quiet. He asks not, did they like it, but, was it true? Was it good? Was it mine? And because that court cannot be packed or bribed or swayed by the mob outside, his work takes on a quality the approval chasers can never fake. It is consistent because it is sourced from one unmoving place. He does not need you to tell him he did well. He already knows. It is not arrogance. That is a man who has taken his own life back into his own hands. And if you are that kind of man, the one building something that does not ask permission to exist, then let me say plainly why this channel is here. The forged mind is being built for you, for the man who would rather possess himself than impress a room. If these words are landing somewhere real, subscribe and walk the rest of this with me. That is all. Now, back to the work. Because self-possession is not a mood you summon. It is a discipline you drill, and Seneca hands you the 2 oldest tools in the Stoic kit. The first the Romans called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, the deliberate rehearsal of loss before it arrives. Most men flinch from this. They think dwelling on what they might lose will sour the having of it. Seneca says the opposite is true. Sit in a calm hour and walk through it deliberately. The deal collapses, the name is slandered, the body fails, the friend dies, the fortune flies away as he promised it might. Do not do this to torment yourself. Do it so that when the blow comes, and it will come, it lands on a man who has already stood where it strikes. Nothing can ambush the man who has already been there in his mind. In the 13th letter, he gives the diagnosis behind the whole practice. There are more things, he writes, that frighten us than that crush us, and we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Most of your dread is the rehearsal of catastrophes that never arrive. So rob them of their power by visiting them on your own terms, in daylight, while your hand is steady. The second tool is harder and stranger, voluntary hardship. Set aside days. Seneca did this himself. When you eat the plainest food, wear the roughest cloth, sleep on the harder bed, and let yourself be uncomfortable on purpose. And in the middle of that self-imposed scarcity, ask the one question that dissolves 1,000 fears. Is this the thing I was so afraid of? Is this the poverty I have arranged my whole life to avoid? Almost always, the answer is no. This is survivable. This is even clean. This is fine. And once a man has tasted the bottom and found it bearable, fortune has nothing left to threaten him with. You cannot be made to fear a fall you have already practiced. This is how self-sufficiency stops being a noble idea and becomes a thing in the body. A drill you run until the grip of fortune simply loosens off your throat. There is one possession Seneca guards above all others, and it is the one most men give away for free: time. Nothing, he writes in the very first letter, is truly ours except time. The one thing nature handed us so fleeting and slippery that anyone who wishes can take it from us. We keep our money behind locks and our property behind walls, and meanwhile we let any man who asks help himself to our hours, our attention, our irreplaceable days, and we call it being agreeable. On the shortness of life, he sharpens the blade further. It is not, he insists, that we have a short time to live, but that we waste so much of it. Life is long enough and generously given for the highest things, if all of it were well invested. The trouble is never the length of the life. The trouble is the leak. And here is where the needy man bleeds out. Because he needs approval, he gives his hours to men who merely flatter him. Because he needs permission, he waits in other men's antechambers for nods he could have given himself. Because he needs to be needed, he answers every summons, attends every gathering, shoulders every burden a louder man hands him, and at the end, he wonders where the decades went. The self-possessed man does the opposite, and from the outside, it can look almost rude. He is a miser with his time and generous with nearly nothing else. He guards his mornings like a treasury. He says no without apology, because he has understood that every yes to the trivial is a no to the work only he can do. This is not coldness. It is the most honest form of respect for your own life and for the thing you were put here to build. Reclaim the calendar, and you reclaim the self. What does all this drilling and guarding and refusing actually buy you? Not grimness, not a clenched, defended life. It buys the thing Seneca wrote an entire essay to chase down for a restless friend. On tranquility of mind, written to cure a man named Serenus of his constant disgust and unrest. The Greeks had a word for the prize, euthymia, an inner steadiness, a mind that runs a smooth and even course, pleased with itself and at peace with its surroundings, neither lifted up by good fortune nor cast down by bad. This is the quiet power. This is the thing the title promises, made flesh. Picture the two men side by side. The first is dependent, and so he is frantic, checking, scanning every face for the verdict, lurching from elation to dread as the externals rise and fall, because his whole peace is staked on things he cannot control. The second needs nothing external for his calm, and so he carries his calm into every room he enters. He moves slowly, not because he is lazy, because nothing can panic a man whose peace was never out there to begin with. The crisis lands on the table and he does not flinch, because the part of him that matters was never on the table. Others feel it the moment he walks in. They cannot name it, but they orient toward it, the way a loud room quiets half a tone when a genuinely composed man sits down. That is the formidable thing. And notice, he did nothing to project it. He is not performing strength. He simply has nothing left for fortune to rattle, and the stillness that remains reads, to everyone watching, as power. A mind pleased with itself does not need the crowd's noise to feel alive. That silence at the center of him is the whole reward. Now we come to the turn the whole essay has been climbing toward. The answer to everyone who hears need no one and recoils. certain this must end in a cold and loveless man. It ends in precisely the opposite, and this is the deepest thing Seneca has to teach you. Go back to that 9th letter, where he separates himself from the schools that made friendship a kind of insurance. The lesser teaching said, get a friend so that someone will sit by your sickbed, so that someone will pay your ransom, so that you are covered when you are weak. Seneca turns it completely around. The wise man wants a friend, he says, so that he may have someone by whose sickbed he himself may sit, someone in chains whom he himself may set free. Feel the direction of that. The needy man's friendship flows inward. What can you do for me? What do I get? Who will catch me? The self-sufficient man's friendship flows outward. Whom may I sit beside? Whom may I free? What may I give? And he can love that way only because he needs nothing back. This is the secret hidden inside the whole hard doctrine. Because he is already full, his love is not a hand reaching to be filled. It is not a transaction, not insurance, not a clutching at another person to plug a hole inside himself. He befriends from overflow, not from lack. He chooses you for your own sake. The way a man stops before something beautiful, in Seneca's image, not because he means to take it, but simply because it is good. And not because he is afraid to be alone. Think of what that does to the people around him. The needy man, however warm he seems, is always using. His affection has a hook in it, a quiet invoice. The self-sufficient man can finally connect cleanly, because there is no hook, no invoice, nothing owed. So the great inversion stands, and you should carry it out of here above everything else. The man who needs no one is the only man who can truly love someone. Everyone else is just negotiating. But none of this, the steadiness, the clean love, the open hand, arrives in a soft life. Seneca is unsentimental about where it comes from. In On Providence, he asks the question every suffering man asks. If there is order in the world, why do hard things fall on good men? His answer reframes adversity entirely. The good man, he says, is not pampered by the divine. He is tested by it, hardened, made ready. Fire tests gold. Misfortune tests brave men. The hardship is not the breakdown of the plan. The hardship is the plan. It is the forge, and you are the metal, and the heat is doing the one thing that ever makes a blade. So he tells you not to pray for an easy road. Pray instead for the strength that needs no easy road. And understand that such strength is deposited in a man only by the very difficulties he refuses to be rescued from. Every time you are caught and saved before the lesson lands, you are robbed of what the struggle was trying to give you. This is why the self-sufficient man does not look for the exit, and does not look for the hand that pulls him out. He has stopped treating difficulty as an emergency, and Seneca takes it one step past mere endurance. In the 96th letter, he names the final attitude. I do not merely obey God, he says. I agree with him. I follow because my soul wills it, not because I am compelled. That is the summit of independence. Not gritted submission to a fate you resent, but willing alignment with it, wanting the world to be no different than it is. A man who has reached that needs no rescue, because there is nothing left to be rescued from. He has stopped fighting the forge and started, at last, to trust the fire. And then, one day in the spring of the year 65, the fire came for him in full. After a conspiracy against Nero was uncovered, one in which Seneca's own guilt was doubtful, very likely no guilt at all. The order arrived from the emperor he had raised and served and tried for years to restrain. Seneca was commanded to die. Let us be exact and not pretty, because the truth is stronger than the legend. This was not a serene exit chosen in freedom. It was a forced death, a suicide ordered by a tyrant, and no man should be praised for choosing what was in fact taken from him. But here is what was genuinely his, what no order from Nero could command. The manner of it, Tacitus tells us how it went. His friends around him broke down, and it was Seneca who steadied them. He reminded them of the philosophy they had all studied together, and asked where it had gone, now that they finally needed it. He turned to comfort the weeping rather than beg for comfort himself. He opened his veins, and because he was old, and his blood ran slow and thin, death would not come quickly. And still he did not panic. Still he kept dictating his thoughts to the scribes as his life drained out, composing to the very end. He took poison when the bleeding failed. He died at last in the warm steam of a bath, self-possessed to his final breath. Sit with what that proves. A man who needs nothing, not even more years of life bought on another man's terms, cannot finally be coerced, because there is no last thing left to take from him that he has not already let go. Nero could end his life. Nero could not touch his composure. That is where 40 years of philosophy paid out in a single hour. Everything he had practiced, the rehearsed loss, the open hand, the agreement with fate, was simply who he was when the worst arrived. The doctrine did not fail him at the door of death. It walked him through it. So bring it home and make it yours. You are building something, a body, a craft, a name, a house, a life that will outlast you. Build it relentlessly. Want it fully. Seneca never told you to want less from the world. He told you to need less of it for your own peace. So acquire and hold it loosely. Love and need nothing back. Need no one's approval, and you will build what is true instead of what is seen. Need no one's rescue, and adversity becomes your forge instead of your terror. Need no one's permission, and you reclaim your own hours and your own road. Need little of fortune, and there is no handle left for any hand to turn. Do this, and you will become the quietest and the most formidable man in any room you enter. Not because you conquered the others, but because you stopped requiring anything from them, and in that freedom became, at last, able to give them everything. They will still call you cold? Let them. They are looking at a man who has simply moved his life somewhere they cannot reach it, and called that distance independence. You will know it by another name. You will know it as the lamp that stays lit when the doors are shut, the citadel that holds when the wheel of fortune turns, the one possession no emperor could command and no friend could grant. Own yourself, and you can lose everything else and still rise in the morning whole. That is the quiet power of the man who needs no one. Go and become him, so that you are finally free to need nothing and to love everything.